Today we're going to start from Sadek 95a. Itzmar. It's maybe 11 lines from the bottom. 10 lines from the bottom. Okay. That's 95a. Sadek. We thank Hashem that you're able to learn Torah every day. And especially we're learning Shem based in English immediately. Learning Lili Nishmas, Sahadol the Bachbar, Yamin, and Ham said that Metzia, first name for David Sarah, and for whoever else needs your first name. Okay. So we're learning really about the Shemrim, the Shayel, the borrower, the the Shemer Sacher, the paid watchman, and the Shemer Chinim, the non-paid watchman. We had a machlekes already. We mentioned about the renter. If the renter is considered a paid watchman or a non-paid watchman. There was a machlekes. What machlekes is. Okay, we're discussing Baila Vimai. If the owner is doing work with the borrower, we said that if he's doing work with the borrower, that would be an exemption. But the borrower won't have to pay for the unpreventable. That's the original case. The original case, he won't have to pay for the unpreventable damages, the inus. Then we said by extension, what we learned yesterday, that he also won't have to pay for theft or if it's lost. Where did we get that from? Because we extended it over to the Shemer Sachar because of the above. It says Vichi Yeshal, and he will borrow. It's telling me that the halachas of the borrowers go back also to the paid watchman, and then from the paid watchman that takes us over to the borrower again. That even if the borrower has something that's stolen from him, or lost from, or the item is lost or stolen, but the owner was with him at the time when he borrowed it, so they'd be exempt as well. Basically, by Lavimai, that concept that the owner's with the borrower is going to work so far if it's unpreventable circumstance, and the same will apply if it's stolen or lost. It'd be an exemption you want to pay. No, it shouldn't be total negligence. It shouldn't be that some sort of it wandered out, that type of. He swears when he's exempt. He doesn't swear. Right. So he swears. He always swears when he's exempt. Then there's these other oaths that he has to take to make sure that we know that he's not really keeping it. Okay, the Gemara starts like this. Itmar, we have a statement that is usually introducing a machlekes of Amirayim. Here, it's doing that again. It is pligi. It says like this. Shia b'bailam, when it comes to negligence, of the borrower. Now, the original case of negligence was by the Shemer Chinam, by the non-paid watch. So, pligi bar Ravach Ravina, it's machlekes between Ravach and Ravina. Chadamar Chayiv, Chadamar Pata. One says that if the owner was with the owner of the item, was doing work for the watchman at the time when he borrowed it, so then he'd be exempt. And the other opinion says, no, that's not for negligence. For negligence, it doesn't apply. Negligence, you have to be chayiv anyway, even if the owner's doing work. Mandam chayiv, the one that says that you're chayiv, pasavar, mikronidrus lefanav leilifnei fanav. You could have brought some logic over here. Chayiv just because of negligence, but the Gemara is no. The Gemara is saying that when I have to remember yesterday, three passages in the Torah. Shemer Chinim was the first one. Shemer Sacher was the second one. The Shayel was the third one. Unpaid, paid, and borrower. So we've said like this, that the halacha of Shila B'Bailam, of the exemption when the owner's doing work with you, We can extend that back one step, back to the Shemer Sachar. So this opinion holds that you only extend it back one step to the Shemer Sachar. It's chayav on if it's stolen or lost. But it won't go back to the Shemer Chinam, to the non-paid watchman. To go back two steps, that's too much. Hilkach and Bailavima, Shemer Chinam like Ziv. Therefore, the concept, the exemption of the owner being with the person, and is never written by the Shemer Chinam, by the non-paid watchman. And it doesn't discuss negligence by those other cases. We know that they're chayav because if the Shemer Chinam is chayav, that's such a low level of responsibility. For sure, the borrower and the paid watchman are chayav, but it doesn't actually say it in the verses. Therefore, what comes out is the Shemer Sachar and the Shayel L'chiyuv. How do we know that they're ever chayav, that they're ever obligated for negligence? We learned it from a Kal V'chemer from the Shemer Chinam, from the non-paid watchman. If the non-paid watchman is chayav, right, then for sure the paid watchman should be responsible, chayav, liable, and the borrower as well. Aval b'bailam lifter, but to say that he's exempt when the owner's with him, so we're not going to say that, even though I have other cases by the Shemer Sachar and other cases by the Shayel where he will be exempt if the owner was with him at the time of the borrowing of the item. My timer, but over here I won't say that. What's the reason? It only says the exemption by the laws of the Shayel and by the Shemer Sachar, the laws that say clearly by it. But Shia, negligence, it speaks that halach of negligence is discussed in the category of the non-paid watchman. And over there, I don't have the halachas of by Levimai, the owner will with the person. That's one view. Doesn't tell us who holds that. It's either Ravach or Ravina. Mandam or Pater, the other opinion holds because of Mikunidus Lefanav Lifnefanav. Then no, because you have above there, which means hand, so it takes me back to all the cases beforehand, which is also the Shemer Chinam. So the logic of this machlekes is based on how we want to read that above. The and is it going back on two cases before or just the immediately prior case? Okay, so Tanan, we have to try to prove this, which one is correct. So when we learned in our Mishnah, Shayel para, our Mishnah said less a para. Right? Someone borrowed a cow, Shayel balaim, and he borrowed the owner with it. It means the owner's doing work with the borrower at the same time when he borrowed it. Shayel apara, someone borrows the cow, v'sachar balaima. He rented the owner with it. The owner is doing work with the person, but he's getting paid for that work. Or maybe it wasn't simultaneous, or maybe first he borrowed the owner, and then he borrowed the item. That was also said was an exemption. Now this is very interesting. You only gave me a case of borrowing the cow, but you didn't give me a case of a non-paid watchman. Looks like the halachas of Bailavimai don't apply to the non-paid watchman. Doesn't talk about the Shemer Chinam, which means that it probably doesn't apply. This would be a proof to the opinion that holds that Shia B'Bailam negligence, even when the owner's there, would still be chayav. Because the case of the exemption was only by the borrower. He didn't say the exemption by the non-paid watchman. That is the logic, but it's not the logic. Hillel is mentioning that the logic of Bailavimai is because the owner is there and has some level of responsibility along with him. Now, that's logical. The only problem is that it doesn't fit perfectly with the halachas of Bailavimai. Yes, you'll see a little shortly. So turns out that Bailavimai seems to be just a a halacha that's in the Torah that maybe even without logic. Yeah. In other words, let's say you have two properties. The owner is painting one property. The owner of the lawnmower that you took was painting one property in a different city, and you're with this lawnmower for your other property in the other city. You're going to be exempt. Negligent, not negligent so far. We don't know about that, but for the borrowing for breaks or something, even though the owner's not there. I know. No, that's an easy way of understanding it, which is what the fallback, understanding the halacha, but ultimately that's not the full logic. You'll see in a moment. So it says Vilu Shemachinam like Tani, but it doesn't say in the Mishnah that the Shemachinam would be exempt. Where it says Al Taimech, think you're so smart. According to you, Shemer Sacher Miktani. Does it mention the Shemer Sacher? Doesn't say the Shemer Sacher either. And we already learned that it applies to the Shemer Sacher. So Elatana Milsa de Ksiva must be that the Mishnah was only saying things that it says clearly in the pasuk. Ksiva behedya says clearly Ktani. That's what it teaches. Dasi Midrasha like Ktani. It's not saying things that's derived from the verses that the sages need to read into it to derive. Therefore, the fact that it doesn't mention in the Mishnah Shemachinam, well, so what? It doesn't mention Shemer Sacher either. Okay, Tashma. So come and listen to another case. Shalom v'shal balaima sachra. See, Rashi on the Mishnah made a point of emphasizing that the Mishnah does not discuss if you rented the cow. It only discusses if you borrowed the cow. It does discuss if you rented the owner. Yeah, doesn't know, like hired. It does discuss that, but it doesn't discuss renting it. However, the Brisa does discuss renting the cow. Now, it's very important for Rashi to point that out because the last Gemara was very clear that we're only talking about a borrower. The way the Gemara just explained the Mishnah, that it's only discussing things that are clearly in the Torah. Well, let's take a look at the Brisa. The Brisa says, if someone borrows a cow and he also borrows the owner together with it, Sachra rents the cow. Okay, we didn't have that before. Sachra ba'alima, and he rents the owner with it. So whatever he's doing to the cow, he's doing with the owner. Or maybe not. Vashala, he borrows the cow, Vasachra ba'alima, and he rents the owner. So now it's different. Or Sachra, he rents the cow, Vashala ba'alima, and he borrows the owner with it. Even though the owner is doing work, the owner of the cow, not the borrower, the owner of the cow is doing work somewhere else for the owner, for the borrower, or for the renter. Umesa, and the cow dies, pater, it's going to be exempt. See, he doesn't even have to be there. This disproves that theory. He doesn't have to be there, and he's going to be exempt. Well, what did we learn here? We learned that even by renting, the halacha of bailavimai applies. That if the owner's with the borrower or the renter, it's going to be an exemption. So we understood like this. We understood Hamani Rabbi Yehudi Damasher Seicher Kashemer Sacher Dami. What's a renter? A renter is the same laws as a paid watchman. You see, it applies to the paid watchman, but no one mentioned yet that it applies to the Shemer Chinam. So for Hai Tanach Tani Milsa Dasi Midrasha, we see that he is teaching things that come from what's derived from the Torah, that's not explicit in the Torah. Like Tani, and he doesn't even mention the Shemer Chinam to prove that Shila B'Bailam, that Bailavimai doesn't apply to negligence because he doesn't mention the Shemer Chinam, the non-paid watchman. Umar says, well, that's a proof, but it's all based on an assumption. Based on an assumption that a renter is considered a Shemer Sacher. However, the Gemara says, Hamani Remeiri, this price is really Remeir. He's really a non-paid watchman. We got a machlekes before Rabbi Yehuda and Remeir. If a renter is considered a paid watchman or non-paid watchman. So if he's a non-paid watchman, so then we have an answer exactly the other way. Once it says it by Shem Mechinam, which would mean that it was negligent, same halacha would apply to the Shem Sachar, which could be stolen or lost, but there would be an exemption if the owner's with him. Okay, so we thought we had a proof one way. It turns out that it could be actually a proof the other way. Viba Yasema, if you want, you could say, if you want the Brisa not to be Reb Meir, still be discussing a Shem Mechinam, so you could turn the opinions around from the other Brisa that had a discussion of what the renter is, and we say like this: how does a renter pay? Rameir says like a paid watchman. Rabbi Yehuda says that he's a non-paid watchman. So if for whatever reason you have that you'd like the Brisa to follow Rabbi Yehuda, then and we can still answer the same question. We can answer the question the same way. Say that we're discussing a shemachinam, discussing a renter, and Rabbi Yehuda holds that renter is a shemachinam. Basically, all we did over here was said that it's a shemachinam, but you have an option of saying that's Rabbi Meir's opinion or Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Taisvis is wondering why anyone would want the Brisa to be like Rabbi Yehuda. Like, what do you gain by that? So the Brisa is Rabbi Meir, the Brisa is Rabbi Yehuda. What's the big deal? Because you don't have to switch. If you specifically want the Brisa to be like Rabbi Yehuda, then you'll switch the gears around. Where do they quote that from? Quote over here in line with the principle that anonymous prices follow Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Ritva. Scholars' assumption was based on a general principle that anonymous prices reflect the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Now, I know that Stam Sifra is Rabbi Yehuda, a Sifra, which would be a Brisa in Vayikra. Stam Sifri is Rashbi. Stam Mishnah is Rameya. Stam Tisef is Rameya. I don't know, like what the source is. I don't have the Ritzvah here. No. But the Mishnah is Rameya. Okay, maybe. Anyone ever hear that? Stam Brisa is always Rabbi Yehuda. No, it's not. I know it's, but it says in Teres Kayanim in the Sifra, it's Rabbi Yehuda. This would be. It doesn't even tell me where the Brisa is from. Brisa would be. Is it a Tosefta? Let's take a look if it's a Tosefta. Yeah, the Tosefta I see. The Tosefta doesn't have it. The Tosefta doesn't explain that. Whoops. No, I don't see that here. And it's funny that the Sefta has 11 chapters in Metzia instead of 10. I don't see it. I don't see it in the Sefta. Shayla Sapara, Shal Bailima, Secher Sapara, Vesacher Bailim. It is a Sefta. Shala Veshal Baila. Afisha Bailam Eindim Vecharshim B'Makamacha. It's a slight difference. It is a Sefta. Perik Ches. What is this? Ches. If you want to look it up. Zion. Yes. Yeah. There's a Tosefta, but Stam Tosefta is Rav Nechemia. Doesn't say Stam Tosefta. Anyway, okay. The Ritva says it, so we'll accept it. Amar Rav Hamnuna. Yeah, we have a new piece here. Amar Rav Hamnuna. Laila Muchayev. I should say part of Chayishba. Chamar Mechamar Acharav. Adshiu Baila Mishas Shila Jashur Mesa. Rav Hamnuna has two statements. Statement number one is that the owner has to be doing work, like Hillel was saying, with the animal itself. If you borrowed a cow, then the owner has to be standing there plowing with it. Borrowed a donkey, then the owner has to be the one that's making it move, that's walking along with it or leading it, riding it. Statement number two is that when you want to use this exemption of Baila Bima, want to be exempt because the owner is together with the borrower, the owner needs to be together with the borrower from the time of borrowing all the way till the time of when the accident happened. Only then can you use the exemption. Okay, it's two statements. Alma Kasavar, the Gemara elaborates on Rav Hamnuna's statement that Bailav Imai Akula Melsa Mashma, that when it says the words Bailav Imai, the owner is with him. What is the Imai? It means there's with him with everything from beginning to end. Imai is with him. It's like that's the way it's understanding that. Okay. Masiv Rava. Rava says Shala v'Shal Baila Ima. Quotes the Brisa. Someone borrows the animal and he also borrows the owner. He rents the animal, he rents the owner also, he hires the owner. He rents the animal and he borrows the owner. Shala he borrows the animal and he hires the owner. Even if the owner is doing work somewhere else, he's exempt. Well, statement A of Rav Hamnuna, that the owner needs to be doing work with the animal, was just contradicted by this brisa. Brisa says even if the owner is doing work somewhere else. My love, what does it mean? The makam acher somewhere else. The malacha acheres with other work. Gemara says loy ba'isa malacha. It means with the same work. He's still here. He's just somewhere else. What does it mean? He's doing work with this, but he's somewhere else. Ella my makam acheres. What do you mean somewhere else? Another place. The kamar marpe vazal kama. What's happening over here is that the animal is plowing, but the owner is walking in front of the animal, softening up the soil so that when the animal plows, this animal doesn't get hurt by the plow, the soil being too hard. He's softening up the soil in front of the animal. So he's actually doing work together with the animal. That's what it means. B'makamacha, he's not in the back, he's in the front. Yeah. This guy's in front, probably with a stick or a shovel, softening the soil. So as the plow goes through, it's softer for the plow. The Gemara says, 1 second. No. Gemara says, if you read further in the Brisa, you're going to see that you can't explain it the way that you're saying. The Tani Seifa, if you read further, it says, let's say first he borrowed the cow. And then he borrows the owner. Sachra, he rents the cow. Then he hires the owner after the borrowing or after the renting. Even though the owner is doing the plowing on top of the animal, Mason, the animal dies, is chayav. Why? Because it wasn't there at the time of the borrowing itself. The owner only came later, even though he was there at the time of the accident. But you're still chayav. Well, we're on 95B. Tzadik Hey Amid Beis. Yeah. No. What do you? Yeah. Turn one more page. No, that's Tzadik Hey. Let me see. We're holding by the so you see clearly that if the Seifa is talking about that they're doing work together, then the Reisha is obviously talking about where they're not doing work together. And if they're not doing work together, then that's a kasha on Rav Hamnuna that says that they need to be doing work together in order for the exemption to take place. The Gemara says like this: Amri, they'll answer. Reisha v'Seifa b'Isam Malacha. They're really both talking about that they're doing the same work. Reisha Rabusa Kamashlan and V'Seifa Rabusa Kamashlan. The first part of the Bryce wanted to tell me a chiddush, and the second part of the Bryce wants to tell me a chiddush, a novelty. Reisha Rabusa Kamashmalan. What's the surprise from the Reisha? What's it telling me that I didn't know before? That even though it's not literally on top of the animal, but it's as long as it's together with the same work, and he was there at the time of the borrowing, so there's going to be exemption if an accident happens or whatever happens. Sefer Abusa Kamashmalan, the end of the brisa is telling me also a surprise. Even though he's mamish working on top of the animal, even though but because he wasn't there at the time of the borrowing, it's going to be chayav. Okay. When it says 1 second, hi Mai, what are you telling me? If you would have told me that, you know what, in the Reisha he's going to be pater, even though he's doing different work. In the Seifa he's going to be chayav, even though he's doing the same work. Then fine, that would have been a chiddush, would have been a surprise. But if they're both doing the same work in the beginning and in the end, and one is just on top and one is in the front, my Rabusi, what's the chiddush? He said that that's the same work is all the same work. There's no chiddush in making it different. There's no difference. There's no halachic difference between if he's on top or if he's in the front. If you would have told me that something that has a halachic difference, he's not doing the work, not doing the same work, he's doing other work, not with the animal, then that would have been a chiddush. But over here, you're telling me that they're both doing work with the animal. Just one happens to be on top of the animal, and one's in front of the animal. V'itanya, and I have a problem with the other part of Rav Hamnuna's statement. It says, Mimash Mashanemar, it's understood. There's a brisa that says like this. It's understood from what it says in the pasuk in Ba'al of Imai La Yishalim. If the owner is with the borrower, he doesn't have to pay. Any Yedeyash in Ba'al of Einimai Yishalim Yishalim. Does that not imply that the owner is, if the owner is not with him, that he does have to pay? He said if the owner's with him, he doesn't have to pay. Okay? If the owner's not with him, then he does have to pay. So why does the pasuk have to why does the pasuk have to then go on and say if the owner's not with him, he does have to pay? We understood that from the first half of the statement. It's coming to tell you that if he's with him at the time of borrowing, that if he's with him at the time of borrowing, he doesn't need to be with him at the time of the accident. If the owner is with him at the time of the accident, that's not enough. He still has to be there at the time of borrowing to use this exemption. So it's at the time of borrowing where it really makes a difference. This really disproves that theory that he needs to be there at the time because he's taking some of the responsibility. He doesn't even have to be together with him at the time of the accident. As long as he was there at the time of the borrowing, that's enough. Tanya Yidach, we have another brisa that says same story. It's just quoting the other pasuk first. I understand already from when the verse says if the owner's not with him, he has to pay. Does that not imply that if the owner's with him, he doesn't have to pay? Why does it have to say if the owner's with him that he doesn't have to pay? We understood that from if he is not with him, he does have to pay. Leimalach is coming to teach you, it's coming to tell you that he only needs to be there just for the time of borrowing. Once it leaves the owner's house, together with the borrower, together with the owner, so then he's going to be exempt, even if the owner then goes back home. He's still going to be exempt. So that's only needs to be there for that time. Well, the Gemara says you just disproved two statements from Rav Hamnuna. The first statement, which was that he needs to be doing the same work, we said we disproved from the Brisa. The Brisa says Malacha Achera. And you also disproved the second statement, which says that he needs to be there the entire time from beginning to the end. When it says Tiyufta the Rav Hamnuna, Tiyufta, this is surely a question, a strong question, Rav Hamnuna. You leave it as a strong question. Okay. Next Gemara. Second. Just Hashem said so. So far, it also is a case of the paid watchman, which may include the renter. And there's a machlekes if it includes also the unpaid watchman, an exemption for shir.
So when the Gemara says tiyufta on Rav Hamnuna, is that the Gemara's way of saying it can't find a source and it can't find logic for his position either?
Yeah, it's rejected. Yeah. Sometimes it says tiyufta and it takes it back, but when it says tiyufta the Rav Hamnuna tiyufta, then it's finished. It's rejected. Okay. Now we had a grammar discussion a day or two ago with Rav Nassan and Rav Yeshia. Whenever you have a verse that doesn't say the word or, does it mean or? When it says and, does and mean or not? Rav Nassan said that if it wanted to say and, that means together with, it would have used the word yach. If it doesn't do that, then it means or. Rav Yeshia said no, it always means together, everything's together. It means and. Okay. Now, we have two parts to the Baal Avimai. We have the Baal Avimai at the time of borrowing. We have the Baal Avimai, the owner with the borrower at the time of borrowing, and we also have it at the time of the accident. So Abaya Savalak Rabbi Yeshua, Matas the Kraik Rabbi Yeshua. Abaya follows Rabbi Yeshua, who says that it always means and, with, together with, and he'll explain the verses according to Rabbi Yeshua. Rava Savalak Rabbi Yonasan and Matas the Kraik Rabbi Yonasan. Rava will follow Rabbi Yonasan and he'll answer the verses according to Rabbi Yonasan. Abaya Savalak Rabbi Yeshua, let me go back to explain what Abaya's opinion was. He follows Rabbi Yeshua, Matas the Kraik Rabbi Yeshua, and he'll explain the verses according to Rabbi Yeshua. If the owner isn't with him, then he has to pay. Taima, the reason is the lesser betavayo, he's not by both of them. Now, it's funny that the Gemara is doing this because it didn't. Let's take a look. How the verses have the two. This is in Parshas Mishpatim. So when a person, let's read it in English. If a person borrows an animal from his friend and it breaks a limb or dies, and its owner is not working for the borrower in parentheses, he must pay compensation. If its owner is working for the borrower, he shall pay. Now there were two statements before this: the owner working, the owner not working. The two statements were if a person borrows. The second statement was and it breaks a limb or dies. So those two statements. Does that mean the owner's not with him? Is it going on both of those statements, or is it going on one of those statements? So Abaya says it means both of them. Time at less Tabayo. When it says Bailav Einima, the owner is not with him, that's so he has to pay. That's because he wasn't there for both of them. But if he's there by one of them, then he's already pater. 1 second. What about the other verse? Other says if the owner is with him, then he doesn't pay. He needs to be there by both for him not to pay. But if he's there by one, and he's not by the other one, then he's mechayiv, then he does have to pay. So we have contradictory implications. What's implied from the first pasuk is that he's going to be exempt if he's there by one, either the borrowing or the accident. What's implied from the second pasuk is that he's going to be chayav if he's there by one. So loimalach, but it's coming to tell you hayim b'shashila in tzarich liyasim b'shashver meseim b'shashver mes tzarich liyasim b'shashila. It's coming to tell me that there's only one of them that's really significant, and that's the borrowing. But if he's there by the so with the verse that tells me that one of them is enough to exempt him, that's talking about the borrowing. The verse that tells me that one of them is enough to make him chayev, that's talking about if he's only there by the accident, it's going to be chayev. The exemption only takes place if the owner is with the borrower at the time of the borrowing. Rava Savalak Rabbi Yonasan and Matthias Rabbi Yonasan. Rava does exactly the same thing, but just the opposite. And according to Rabbi Yonasan, who says that it's always meaning one and not meaning both. Tanya was started in a brisa. If the owner's with him, he doesn't pay. Probably he's there by both. But Rabbi Yonasan also holds that he only has to be there for one, right? Because Rabbi Yonasan says that every and also means or. So it could be by one also. So that means he would be exempt even for one. But this also implies if the owner is not with him, that he is obligated. That means even if he's there for one, he's obligated. Now we have implications that are contradictory. My answer is Laimalach, it's coming to tell you that only one of them is significant, and that's the one that's by the borrowing. That's not the one by the accident. Accident, he'll be obligated to pay if the owner's there. If the owner's there by the borrowing, then he'll be exempt from pay. Well, the Gemara says all of this was arbitrary. It happened. You had a contradiction, so you said, well, one is this, one is that. Eipachana. Maybe it's exactly the opposite. Maybe if the owner's there by the accident, that's when you'll be exempt. The owner's there by the borrowing, that's when you'll be chayiv. No, more probable that the borrowing is more significant because that's when he brings it into his domain. It says, no, on the contrary, the accident is when it's more significant because that's when he becomes obligated to pay for the accident. The Gemara says, he never borrowed it. Then who cares that it was an accident? It's not chayiv anyway if he didn't borrow it. Then second, if there was never an accident, so what's the difference if he borrowed it? The Gemara says, no, something takes place at the borrowing, even regardless of the accident, and that is that he becomes obligated to protect this animal and to feed it. There's some obligations that come on him when he borrows it, and that's the most significant time. Ravashi brings a pasuk. It says, when a person will borrow from his friend, but his friend is not with him, then shalim yishalim. He borrows may imreyeyu from his friend. Not that he's borrowing the friend, he's borrowing from the friend. It means he's taking something from the friend. So then he has to pay. But if his friend is with him, then he would be pater. So we see that it's at the time of the borrowing. The Gemara says, well, if you figured all of that out without even discussing that the owner's there, you got it just from the first phrase of the pasuk. Then so why does the pasuk need to continue and spell it out? If the owner's there, if the owner's not there. It says, if I didn't spell it out, I would have thought that that's just the normal way for the pasuk to talk. It says if he borrows from his friend. Now that it spells it out, now I go back and I read into it that he borrows from his friend, but not that he borrows it and his friend. By Rami Bar Chama. Rami Bar Chama has 7 or 8 questions here, all types of questions about Baila Vimai. Now, it's not so clear that the questions are about Baila Vimai. It could be the questions are just about borrowing in general. But whatever the case is, if it's about borrowing, then by extension, it would also be about Baila Vimai, that exemption to the laws of borrowing. His first question goes like this. Shala l'Rav Hamahu. Let's say someone borrows, but doesn't borrow the animal to use the animal for work. Borrows it for bestiality, to live with it. Could the shaili and shibinan? Do we need someone that borrows like a normal person? No one borrows animals for this. Like Dilma, Taimo Mishamana. Maybe he borrowed it for his own pleasure. And this is going to give him pleasure. So he's considered like a borrower. So the halachas of borrowing would apply. Chayav and Einstein and all of that. That's how Rashi learns it.
Doesn't the animal have to die? This happens?
Yeah, you're saying it's a family share.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, but I think you need witnesses for that. You need witnesses. Person also dies, right? Kill the person.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because you don't leave the animal around because you don't want people saying that that's the animal that caused so and so to die, right? Yeah, we're not saying what he did. Actually, we're saying what he borrowed it for, and then an accident happens. Yeah. Maybe that's the explanation. Right, there's no responsibility except for the fact what we said. The Gemara said is that he has to feed it, even if nothing happens. So there is responsibility kicks in, regardless if there's a liability of something else, right? But there's the responsibility. Shala lirispa. Question number 2. He borrowed the animal not because he needs to do work. He just wants to look fancy. That was like a Rolls Royce. It's a fancy animal. Let's go Bentley. No, Bentley is not as fancy. He was probably going on a shidduch, and he wanted to look wealthy, so he borrowed the animal, borrowed a cow, and said, "Look at this! Oh, what a wealthy guy!" So the mina bina bayeka, he's borrowing something of value when he got it, or maybe value that gives him some benefit, and he doesn't get any benefit from it. Just like looks fancy. He's not getting benefit from the animal, just from the looks, from what people turns to look at the guy. Let's say he borrowed it to do something work that's so small that it's not even worth a pruta. The minor being on vika, do we consider that to be benefit? But we say that no, he's not a real borrower because he didn't even get any benefit that's significant. It's less than a pruta. Now, if we say that it needs to be a pruta, now that's like an imtim talaymar. So let's say let's say he borrows 2 cows to do the work of a pruta. Do we say we go after the borrower and the lender? And there was the work of a pruta that's being done over here because the combination of both cows. Maybe we look at the cows, and each cow only did half a pruta. Each one didn't give him the benefit. Maybe he's not a real borrower. He shouldn't be chayav for the unpreventable losses. Let's say he borrowed from partners. One of the partners is doing work for the borrower, but not both of them. You need all the owners there, and you don't have that. Maybe should be exempt at least from half the payment because half the owners are here. Let's say 2 people borrowed, but the owner is doing work for only one of the partners. So do we need to have the entire borrower that's the owner is doing work for? Or maybe just half the borrower. So over here, there's 2 borrowers. Maybe half of them. It's enough that one half should be exempt. Say someone borrows an item from a woman, but the husband, bad mistake. But the husband is is doing work for the borrower? Do we say that that's considered that the owner is doing work for the borrower? Because he's not really the owner of the item. Wife is the owner of the item. The husband is just doing work for the borrower. Or Isha Shashala, let's say a woman borrows, but the owner of the item is doing work for her husband. Is it considered that the husband borrowed? Is it considered that only the wife borrowed?
Are you allowed to borrow something from a wife without the husband's permission?
So, Taisus asked this. Taisus asked this question. You see Shalman Isha borrows from a woman, Tema. Labal yesh lekayach lahashal b'lei rishusah. V'hine yechil lahashal klal. Yeah, I don't understand what Taisus is answering. Says that maybe the Taisus' second answer is clearer to me. The second answer is that he's borrowing from the husband the item that belongs to the wife. Look, that's Taisus' second answer. The first answer, I don't understand what he's saying. Yeah, but I think she brought it into the marriage, but now the husband has the rights to use it. So how could she just lend it out? I would answer without seeing Taisus. I would have answered that when a Meshulach comes to the door, the wife is allowed to give money, even though all the money in the house belongs to the husband. But small things, not considered stealing when she gives out money for the Meshulach, because he gives her rights for the small items that, so she can do that. Like some nice companies, they allow the employees to spend up to $2,000 without making a request. What is that? 31. Does he explain the Taisus answer? In one interpretation, Taisus contends that although it is the husband who owns the rights to the cow's produce, still he also may not lend it to another without his wife's consent, where both the husband agree to lend the cow. In another interpretation, Taisus holds that the husband may unilaterally lend the cow. According to this understanding, when the Gemara states if he borrowed a cow from a woman, it means from a woman's maluk property. Okay. Let me go further. Kinyan Perski Kinya Kinyan Perski Kinya Guftami Yalai. Gemara is asking the fact that the husband has the what's it called, Yusufruct, has the rights to the fruits. Kinyan Paris, is that considered that he owns the item? Because what's the value's item? Only its use. Or the fact is that he can't sell it. He doesn't really own the item. It's the wife that owns the item. So that's a machlekes, and that's the shaila here. Amalei Ravina Ravashi. Ravina says to Ravashi, I have one more question. Question number 8. Someone says to his messenger, go and borrow me, and I guess lend me, together with my cow. I love mamish binan veleka. I guess it doesn't mean doesn't mean lend me. It means that you do work together with the borrower, together with my cow. Is the shliach considered in place of the owner when it comes to bailavimai, that the owner is together with the borrower? When it comes to the husband, look to the Rabbi Yechon Reish Lakish, that's machlekes. We had this a bunch of times. Machlekes Rabbi Yechon Reish Lakish. Shliach, regarding a shliach, that's a pluk to the Rabbi Yonis and Rabbi Yeshe. It's machlekes Rabbi Yonis and Rabbi Yeshe, different machlekes, but not like the one we had before about the grammar one. But when it comes to the husband, pluk the Rabbi Yechon Reish Lakish did because we have a statement. If someone sells a field to his friend just to eat the fruits, Rabbi Yochanan says, well, this purchaser is now considered the owner. When he brings the fruits to the Beis Hamikdash, he's allowed to say, the land that you have given to me basically means he owns the land, even though he's only there to eat the fruits. Maybe he brings the fruits to Bikurim, but he can't recite the passage because he's not the real owner. Which means, according to Rabbi Yochanan, the use of fruct, the ownership means that he's an owner. So the question that we asked before about if the husband is considered an owner or not, that's considered that's a machlekes Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Regarding Bikurim, if he can read the passage, if he's considered an owner of the property because he's able to eat the fruit. Shliach, when we discussed the agent, is he considered in the place of the owner? That's a plug to the Rabbi Yonis and Rabbi Yeshua, the time we had in Masechta Nedarim. Someone says to a caretaker of his house, any vows that my wife makes while I'm away, you should annul it for her. And he annulled it. Maybe they should be annulled. The husband annuls it, not the agent. Rabbi Yonason says no. We always find in the Torah that an agent is like the person himself. The agent can also annul it. Someone says to a servant, go and lend yourself in my place together with the animals. Now we have a slave here that's doing it, not an agent. This question would go either way, either according to Rabbi Yonason or according to Rabbi Yeshua. It's a question according to Rabbi Yonason that says that a shliach is like the person. That maybe is only by a shliach, an agent, that he's responsible for mitzvahs, so he can really be in the place. But a slave that's not obligated in all the mitzvahs, maybe he's not in the place of the owner. Maybe a slave is less significant. Maybe even if you say, like Rabbi Yeshua, that the agent is not like the owner, that maybe is only by an agent. But maybe by a slave, he's more like the owner because everything that the slave does, that he acquires, automatically goes to the owner. Okay. Malay responded, it would make sense to say that the slave is like the owner, the hand of the owner. It would be Shila B'Bailim. If you would do this. Okay, we'll leave it over here.